Hey everybody, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my homestead and to week 7 of the Three Rivers Challenge. This is a pantry challenge where my family is eating from the food storage in our home and not going to the grocery store except for milk for the months of January and February. On this Sunday evening, I am making some chicken and dumplings. I had mentioned at the end of last week's video that I had made a chicken in the crock pot, hoping to make chicken and dumplings on Saturday for my mom's birthday celebration. However, the chicken was just not finished in time, so I ended up making something different for dinner that night. But I'm pulling out this chicken that I had cooked on Saturday, and I'm cutting out some of it to use for chicken and dumplings this evening. My family is still with us this evening and will be leaving tomorrow morning, so my mom will still get her birthday chicken and dumplings. After dicing up the chicken, I am peeling and chopping our very last carrot that's in the house. We would have had one more, except for my youngest got into the carrots to make her charcuterie board the other week. And I would normally add more carrots than this. I could have pulled out frozen carrots, but I didn't feel like chopping them up smaller because they're just not small enough to be palatable in this application. So I just decided to go with the one carrot and call it a day. Next, I add in a quart of chicken broth to a pot, as well as about 2 quarts of water to make enough liquid for our chicken and dumplings. Then I add in the carrots and let this come to a boil while I work on making the dumpling dough. This is pretty much the same recipe I use to make biscuits, but I make the mixture a little more wet as a finished product. But I use self-rising flour, and then I work in a handful of vegetable shortening. And my grandma described it as being cornmeal consistency. It's really not quite accurate, but I know how it feels and how it looks. So once it gets to that consistency, I add in some milk, and it's always more than I think it's going to be. But I end up getting the consistency that I want, and then we're ready to drop the dumplings in as soon as the carrots are almost tender. My youngest has been really into helping cook recently, and she wanted to help drop the dumplings in, so she is going to help me. Before we add them in, I go ahead and salt the pot quite generously because the dumplings are not salted, and in my experience, this dish really does need quite a bit of salt. So I grab chunks, and my youngest grabs chunks, and we just drop them in there. It was a little difficult to describe to her how to add them in once the top of the pot was full. I use a spoon to kind of gently push them out of the way as I drop more in, like making an open space in the top of the pot because it makes a layer of solid dumplings and you have to push them out of the way. She attempted to help me with this, but it didn't really go so well, so I ended up taking over and doing most of it. But eventually we'll figure out how to communicate that, and where she can observe me a few more times and just pick up what I'm doing. That's really how I learned a lot of my cooking, was from watching my grandma and my mom. And I'm glad that she's interested because none of the other kids have ever really been interested in learning how to cook. So we get all the dumplings in there and wait until they are finished cooking in the middle. Then it's time for the final step of adding in the chopped up chicken. We just let that heat through and we are ready for dinner. It was so good, and I was very happy to be able to make this for my mother for her birthday. This week was definitely light on the meal prep because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday we ate leftovers. There was a lot of snow and a lot of snow removal happening, and I just didn't feel like cooking, and thankfully we had enough leftover chili and chicken and dumplings and a couple other things in the fridge that I didn't have to do much cooking. But here we are on Friday night making the last meal I made for the week. And my youngest wanted to make stir fry with some of the leftover chicken. I pulled chicken off the bone from that roasted chicken I had made for the chicken and dumplings, and the youngest is working on slicing up some really small onions. These are actually the onions that came out of our garden. They're all, pretty little, and these are the ones that she wanted to use. I think at this point there's only one large store-bought onion in the cabinet as we're making this meal, but she wanted to use these little bitty onions from the basement, which is good because they do need to be used up. And as you can see, she was having a little bit of struggle with them burning her eyes. The youngest added some oil to a skillet, and to that we added the sliced onions and some frozen sliced peppers. Then she added in quite a bit of garlic with the garlic press, and we let the onions and peppers cook down until they were more translucent before adding in the mixed vegetables with a little bit of water to help them steam, and of course some salt. At this point I had actually gone outside to put up the chickens for the night and feed the barn cat. So the youngest is adding in the chicken. We have a pot of rice on the back of the stove cooking, and she's also going to add in some soy sauce and some freshly ground pepper. The kids dug into the food before I got into the house, and this is what I found when I got back. And it was a lovely meal, and I was glad to have the little ones help. It was also Valentine's Day, and the kids wanted me to make a heart-shaped cake. So here I am making a chocolate cake in a heart-shaped pan and a circle pan. This is the same recipe I used to make cupcakes sometime in January. And then I'm also making a chocolate icing with some evaporated milk. I'd had some in tablespoon sized silicone mold in the freezer, and I got these popped out of the mold and into the microwave to defrost. Then I started creaming my butter and then getting the powdered sugar and cocoa powder sifted into a bowl. This is a pretty easy recipe. From memory, I think it's 6 tablespoons butter, 6 tablespoons evaporated milk, 6 tablespoons cocoa powder, and I think 3 cups of powdered sugar. Once I have all of that sifted together and then mixed up, and my butter is creamed and fluffy, and the evaporated milk is fully defrosted, I start adding scoops of the sugar mixture alternated with some of the evaporated milk into the mixer until it's all incorporated. Once the cakes are cool, the icing goes on, and these are definitely not the prettiest cakes, but they were delicious, and it was a fun treat to have a heart-shaped cake for Valentine's Day. So happy belated Valentine's Day, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed this week's video for the Pantry Challenge, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye for now.